Now this time we're going to do the whole thing. We got, there's not many people, so we can have room. And Tajli, if you have a problem, it's okay. You can just.
Okay.
So just watch me. If you don't know what to do, it's okay. Toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls, who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Praise be to thee, most supreme God, omnipotent, omnipresent, all-pervading, the only being. Take us in thy parental arms, raise us from the denseness of the earth. Thy beauty do we worship, to thee do we give love. Most merciful and compassionate God, the idealized Lord of the whole humanity, the only whom we worship, and towards thee alone do we aspire. Open our hearts towards thy beauty, illuminate our souls with divine light. O thou, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, all-powerful Creator, Sustainer, Judge, and Forgiver of our shortcomings, Lord God of the East and of the West, of the worlds above and below, and of the seen and the unseen beings, pour upon us thy love and thy light. Give sustenance to our bodies, hearts, and souls. Use us for the purpose that thy wisdom chooseth. Guide us on the path of thine own goodness. Draw us closer to thee every moment of our life, until in us be reflected thy grace, thy glory, thy wisdom, thy joy, and thy peace. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. Stay with the rhythm. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. Inspirer of my mind, consoler of my heart, healer of my spirit, thy presence lifteth me from earth to heaven. Thy words flow as the sacred river. Thy thought riseth as the divine spring. Thy tender feelings awaken sympathy in my heart. Beloved teacher, thy very being is forgiveness. The clouds of doubt and fear are scattered by thy piercing glance. All ignorance vanishes in thy illuminating presence. A new hope is born in my heart by breathing thy peaceful atmosphere. O inspiring guide through life's puzzling ways, in thee I feel abundance of blessings. O thou who art the maker, molder, and builder of the universe, build with thine own hands the universal, our temple for thy divine message of love, harmony, and beauty. Okay. There's this kind of principle when you're working in a group that my Tai Chi teacher used to call sticking. So that when you have a large group of people practicing Tai Chi, you want everybody to be very moving at the same time. And it's kind of the same when doing group practices. You want to be as close to being in harmony as possible. Yeah. So think of it as sticking. So it's like you're focusing on the group rather than yourself. When you're doing your own prayers, it's different.
Yeah.
It's a completely different energy. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, today's
concentration is Pir Vilayat's teaching, some of his teachings, he had a lot, on practices with light. Before we get started into this, I do want to say that some of these practices are pretty complex. So we'll go over it and over it. I don't want you to get it. I want you to feel comfortable with these practices. If you don't understand something, don't hesitate to say it, stop, let's go back and do it again. It's fine with me. He would give these out, and then he would expect his representatives to go over and over and over and over and over it, to make sure people get it, which is what I'm doing. Okay? So, in other words, we want to always believe that we understand something. We want to know that we know it. We want to know that we're ahead of the curve, so to speak, right? And that's not true. This is complex stuff. So just let it be what it is and learn. All right? So we're going to start out with a lecture that he gave. I don't know when, in the early 80s, I suppose. And he says, when one is initiated into the Sufi order, we say, and this is true, it's what you say at the very end, that you may find the path that leads you to the purpose of your life, illumination. So ours is a way of light. One is a being of light. The task at hand is to become conscious of being a being of light and to make it real. So right there, what's that mean to you?
Finding one's own
We should just
path.
come in. Somebody ring the doorbell.
Nice little sign.
Now 40 people around the world are going to hear my doorbell. Hi.
Hi.
Over there.
Would you repeat what one says, or after initiation? May you find the path.
That leads to the purpose of your life.
Okay,
Illumination. That's the very last word you say
I see. Okay.
in any initiation, not just the bayat. Okay, so what's it mean?
It reminds me that there's a difference between trying to be illumination and being illumination.
Okay, that's good. What else?
That there's no one way to do it for everyone. I mean, as far as the practices or
That's true. Okay.
that it's, you could call it a zigzag or a swim, or that you find your way through your internal guidance and your external guidance.
Okay. You're doing all right. Anything else?
It implies there's a goal.
Okay. Is it a goal or a recognition?
It's a recognition. It's not
Right.
a goal as we
Yeah.
have it, not the connotation of goal.
What's a recognition?
Illumination. This is the thing that people get very confused about, is that somehow becoming illuminated is some kind of thing that you need to strive for.
Yeah, it's like an end.
Yeah, and that's not what it is.
Yeah.
It's a discovery.
It's a process.
The reality is there already. It's not like this is something that's new or that is imposed on you, like if you're learning how to do something technical. You don't know how to do it, so you go and you take a course and you learn how to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a normal educational process. But that's not how it works with spirituality. Spirituality is always an unveiling. what is truth? What is truth for you, or what is truth for humanity or the universe, or however you might think about it. Okay? Anyone else have anything to say about that? Carla?
When you first asked the question, what came to me is that it's not simply practices, but it's the ever-present awareness of being a body of light.
Of being a body of light.
No,
Yeah.
It's not only when you're doing practices, but to be reminded.
That's right. Yeah. And how do you do that?
I remember.
Memory is the big biggie, isn't it? Yeah. Do you understand what she just said? Do you understand what she just said?
No, I was thinking about, I was confused. I thought at first it was, we were either going towards the light or away from the light.
Uh-huh.
But when you said it was a discovery, I thought maybe that the answers were already within us.
That's it. That's basic Sufism, Sufism 101. All the guide does is help you find what's already there. There's no imposition. Although it can seem like that sometimes, I suppose. Where'd everybody go? Okay. You okay, love? You
Yeah.
need anything?
No, it's just all sinus. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Just getting my cough drops.
like a new head?
Yes, please. Just new sinus cavity.
New sinus cavity? Okay, here he's talking about something. This is an experience that he would describe from time to time. I heard him say it. Okay, I remember one day looking for a rishi in a cave above Rishikesh. There was a group of people, and someone said, "Yes, there he is, up there." And all I could see was just an enormous white light. And up there on the top of the hill, I didn't realize it was on top of the hill. I thought I saw a light somewhere in space or something. I just saw this light. I noticed that there was a man in the middle of this light, and he had a beautiful white aura. It was so beautiful to be in his presence. One can work with light just like a potter can work with clay. Okay. How wonderful it would be if we could be totally luminous and radiant. We would have a wonderful effect upon the people around us. As soon as one faces a person, one has a lot of light in them somehow. It brings out one's own. One tends to reflect people. So while we're having a conversation with a person, you could just be conscious of being a being of light. Anybody think of a practice that I give all the time that is designed to do just that very thing? No?
Well, I'm thinking of a few. Well, the first thing I'm thinking is the splashing of the light, almost like the first
That's
light
for
gathering.
retreat. That's for retreat.
Yeah.
No, that's not it.
The breathe in, breathe out.
Atta
In,
girl.
Wait, light, out, both light.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
The which one?
When you inhale, you imagine a translucent crystalline light flowing into your body through the crown chakra.
Mm-hmm.
So your whole body is filled with light. And then as you exhale, you imagine a sun in your heart, radiating golden light in all directions. If you practice this practice all the time, you will find that it will change the atmosphere in the room.
How many breaths do you do with that?
All the time.
Yeah.
You just do it.
Stay in that state.
Make it a
Part of
day.
your
Make it a
breath.
constant practice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It has a huge effect on you. This is the very first spiritual practice I ever learned.
I don't
Way
know if
back
you've
in the
given
dawn
it
of
to
time.
me.
Huh? I have. I've mentioned it many times. I never gave it to you? Really? I've been neglectful? I apologize.
I didn't say that.
Okay, so,
Where is that, the practice?
what now?
You have you writing on it?
Yes, I do. I wrote, it's in my book,
Okay.
and I've probably written it down. I can email it to you. But it's not difficult to, just everyone just do this.
Through the crown.
And first of all, first stage is to recognize that there is a universe that our universe rests upon. And that's the initial universe, which is Nur, all-pervading light. It's a universe that's just light, just vibration. There's no point sources, there's no stars, there's no candles, there's no light bulbs, just light. And you access this by just imagining that you can access it. That you're transiting a dimension and tapping into Nur, and as you inhale, draw Nur into your body and see it as a crystalline, translucent light, just like a white, a rock crystal. That's the light. And imagine that you're drawing that into your body with every breath. And you can just do a few inhales. You don't even have to worry about the exhale just yet. So that you're filling your whole body with this translucent light to the point that your cells begin to sparkle with the illumination. Okay? And if you like, you can even hold your breath briefly to feel that internal sparkling. Evanescing, Perla used to call it. Think of a glass of sparkling water or champagne or something like that. There's little bubbles. And then when you're comfortable with that, imagine a golden sun in the middle of your chest, and when you exhale, you're radiating golden light in all directions. And this has several effects. The first effect is that it brightens your aura. The energy field around you becomes brighter, more intense. It clarifies it, actually. If there's any muddiness to your aura, this will clarify it. Second thing is it calms you. You'll notice that this is an automatic kind of relaxation. And the third thing is that it affects your environment. Because you're doing this, it changes how you respond to others. And just by the normal, how people encounter one another, they automatically change how they respond to you. I used to do this in the subway in New York. I'd get on the subway and everybody would be scowling and grumpy, and I'd sit there and... You ever do it?
I have shifted rooms using this practice.
Using this practice, right?
But I've also experienced... You want me to share this?
Sure, go ahead. If you want.
On 2 occasions in the past year, because I'll use it before walking. I am in sales, so walking into a new company, sometimes I'll do that before I walk in through the door. And twice I've had the experience where people got angry.
Yeah, that'll happen too.
Where, it's like, who are you? Get out of here. And I haven't even said anything other than smile at them. And
what's your reaction, though?
My reaction is I continue to smile and I say thank you and I leave.
Doesn't upset you.
I don't
That's
make
right.
it let it upset me, but it's always surprising to me when I see it's almost like a little violent reaction to me walking through the door.
That's another thing that can happen.
Hmm.
That's why the business of being a prophet is so kind of dangerous. Just that little bit. Tajali, you had something to say? Oh, I thought you were about to... No? Okay.
No, I was just taking having a wonderful breath.
Okay. Okay, so how's everybody feel now? Make a difference?
Mm-hmm.
Just this little simple practice?
Is that similar to the prayer of the heart in the Christian tradition?
It is. This is cross-cultural. This practice is in all traditions, as far as I know.
What did you say it was similar to?
The practice of the what you call it, heart, the Sacred Heart,
The prayer of the heart.
the Sacred Heart, Sacred Heart of Mary, or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Is Jesus Christ, Son of God. I say in French, so I'm going to translate that. Have mercy on me.
Okay.
And as you inhale, said, you say have mercy on you, and you keep every breath. You have to do that. That's a lot of Christian in monastery. They spend all day doing that.
Yeah.
Just that, inhaling and God, Jesus Christ, have mercy on me.
Will you say it in French?
What?
Will you say it for us in French? Is that okay?
En français.
En français?
Oui.
Seigneur Jésus, Fils de Dieu, aie pitié de moi.
Thank you.
And what does that translate as?
I think there's so many
Jesus
books
Christ.
written on it.
Son of Mary.
Yeah, Son of God, have mercy on me.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah.
Thank you.
Prayer of my heart. Yeah.
Okay, moving right along. I find that the clue is really just simply remembering that one is a being of light. It does something to one right away. So you will notice that if you can actually access light and feel a response, that gives you a clue right there that there's something going on that is very intrinsic to your being. It's not imaginary. And what is more, the person to whom you are speaking is also a being of light, and that's what establishes the communication. That means you have to have the strength to see the light aspect of that person even though it doesn't come through. That person may be very materialistic, manifest hatred and ugly thoughts in what he or she says or thinks, and yet somehow you still maintain the awareness of the light of the soul. Okay? Now here's a note that is, I don't know if, this might have been something someone put in. Okay, but it says, the following instructions and meditations on light may at first seem slightly repetitive, but each one differs slightly from the other instructions on light in the previous lessons in the manner of focus. Therefore, each brings further information and realization. In other words, it's a very, it's like a learning curve, but it's not really steep. It's pretty gentle, but steady. Okay? So we're going to do practices with light. There are different ways of approaching this, and you must find out for yourself which one you prefer. Now, this is another aspect that some of you know and some of you don't, that when you're working with a guide and they give you a practice and you're uncomfortable with it, you must decide, you must figure out whether it is just inappropriate to you and the guide made a mistake, or it's something that you really need to work on and it wasn't a mistake at all. And it could be either one. No? If it's really, really uncomfortable, well, why?
Yeah.
It might be that it's just inappropriate to you, but it might also be that the guy made a mistake. And that can happen. So, just so, piece of information for you. One can distinguish at least between the light of the aura and the heavenly light or the uncreated light. Now, we're going to go back to lesson 2 and baptism with fire, which is the predecessor to the next exercise. Okay, so I'm going to walk through this and then we're going to do it. But first I'm going to read through it. So if there's any questions, we can deal with that. Okay, purification with fire is you inhale through the mouth, exhale through the nose. Fire is a very drastic form of purification. Think of your most detested and maybe resilient defects: guile, deviousness, manipulation, cheating, deceiving others, any form of accommodating or compromising that humiliates one's spirit because it is below one's ideal. I don't suppose anybody here has any of those problems. Or some other problem. You know, but just think of your... You can think of your defects, but think of them as if you are observing them from a distance. Okay? It's a little easier that way. Otherwise, you get embarrassed and you don't want to think about it. One's own imperious urge for truthfulness calls one's innate fiery nature to the fore. It may manifest itself as hot flushes or bouts of heroic resolve. Kind of like New Year's resolutions, right? Knowing that the temperature of the body is evidence of the fact that organic matter is in an ongoing state of combustion, one may imagine a bioplasmic effusion. What could that possibly be? Emanating from one's body while permeating it. A bioplasmic effusion.
I like that.
Isn't that cool? Pure Hawaiian. One may even identify with this igneous body which pulses as one inhales and exhales. One might experience what it would be like to be a braise, sucking air from the environment. This is what one does as one inhales through the mouth. Actually, one does not only resorb oxygen from the environment, but radiance. For this practice, it is advised to visualize, this is the important part, as one inhales, the lower frequencies, infrared or red, concentrating on the lower chakras, then visualizing yellow or a golden color in the heart chakra, green in the throat, blue in the eyes, violet in the third eye, and a glistening white or colorless light with diamond-like hues in the crown center. The Hermetic principle upon which this practice is based is called transmuting fire into light. Such can only result from a very severe and consistent catharsis. Okay, so what you're doing is you're inhaling in the mouth, out the nose, and as you're doing that, visualize the chakra systems as you're inhaling from the root chakra up, just as he described, from infrared through yellow to green to blue, violet, and the crown center, which is translucent light. So you do that as you're both in. It's a progressive as you're inhaling and exhaling. So what you might do is, as you're inhaling, imagine this vertical energy changing colors as you do that, and then as you exhale, go back down the chakras. See how that feels. It's in the mouth and out the nose. How's that working for you?
That was good.
Takes a little practice to do all this visualization. Okay, has everybody pretty much got that? Yeah? Okay, and now we get to the next part. Okay, again, I'm going to read through this. This is a kind of a progressive practice, and we're going to keep working on it. I'll just read the next little bit. When you reach the crown center, hold your breath. Turn your eyeballs upward and concentrate on the crown center and the light above it. Now see if you can experience a cooling as you proceed up the spine, so that one of the best ways of getting into the kind of consciousness that promotes the radiation of a very high frequency of light is to get into the same state we get into when we experience pure spirit. That is the snow and the ice and the immaculate state. There's a feeling of great coolness, even coldness at the top of the head, at the top of the body. At the bottom of the body, there's a feeling of heat. So as you're inhaling through the mouth, you start up the spine, just like he said. You get to the crown center. You hold your concentration there. Hold the breath for a comfortable amount of time. Concentrate on that. Just see what happens. And then when you're ready, exhale and go back down the spine. See how that feels. Everybody got that? And it's important to remember that when you're holding your breath on any of these practices, you put the tip of your tongue on the soft palate, and which activates the pituitary gland, and turn your eyeballs upward, which activates the pineal gland and releases endorphins. That's what physiologically happens. So how does that feel? What are you noticing?
Definitely more more difficult for me than the breath without the hold, going from the warmer and infrared up to the white effervescent, and then the exhale coming back down. The hold it's a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a rougher road or something. It's like
A rougher road.
Yeah.
You having that experience? What's your experience?
At the hold, it was like I was accessing an entirely new definition of communication.
Okay. See how the experiences can differ?
Yeah.
How about you, Alina?
I found that the first one, I felt more energetically connected and tall, a sense of being very, very tall. And this one, I felt kind of round.
Round?
Yeah.
That's
There's
fun.
there's like this, the roundness of light.
Ah,
This
okay.
one's more like the verticalness of light.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to it? No? Okay, moving right along. There's more. We're going to go right back to the same practice and add a little bit. As you hold your breath and concentrate it on the crown center, eyeballs upward, you tend to reach higher into the spheres of light. And of course, there's no frontier between the crown center and the spheres of light. What do you suppose he means by the spheres of light?
The north.
Okay.
What does he mean by frontier?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? What do you think he means?
A boundary? That's what came to my mind.
How about an interface?
Yeah. An area of that's
It's like a
neither one
threshold.
nor the other.
Yeah, a threshold. It's another way of putting it, sure. But there really isn't such a thing. We just think there is. Because it's a shift in consciousness. The reality is always there.
Superimposed, right?
Yeah, the reality is always there.
Someone in the past kind of described it to me that made more sense to me. It was like tuning a radio. Like you're turning into different frequencies and tuning into.
Back in the days when we had a dial instead
Back
of
in the day when you had a dial. Yeah. Now you have to push the button.
Some of us still relate to the dial.
Okay, here we go. This might give you a clue. You have to overcome the idea of being the person who is experiencing that, but you are that which you experience. Okay? So there really is no frontier, is there? Even though it seems like there
We
is.
need to think of it that way to
Yeah.
be able to go there.
I guess so. Yeah.
Also, the word frontier in our culture, at least, connotates something to be conquered.
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't necessarily be that way because he was English and not American. Right.
Okay.
Good point. And he tended to use words
But
for
the
their fourth and
space is
fifth
the final
meaning.
frontier, and I mean, even beyond
Mm,
the Wild Wild West,
Sure.
space is the final frontier. And it's always, humanity conquering
uh-huh.
nature.
Yeah, and that's not what he means at all. But then, like I said, he would tend to use words with their fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh meaning
Mhm.
down the list somewhere. The great moment is when you realize that you are a being of light and that the body is just a formation that has accrued to you in the course of the descent. Together with that realization is the feeling of incredible joy. You no longer have to think of the red color radiation as you begin exhaling. You're just conscious of your body as a kind of infrastructure that has its own laws, and you do not have to concern yourself with them. It will go on functioning the way it has to. Of course, there's a sense of dissolving totally in that light so that you're not located in space. Now, when you exhale, identify yourself with the celestial light, which is uncreated light. You are infusing your aura with the light, just as we infuse the magnetism of the body with the energy of the Holy Spirit, exactly in the same way. Okay, so you see the additional aspects to this practice now? I just added some more. You're going to inhale, hold your breath at the top, identify with this celestial realms of light, and then as you exhale, imagine that these celestial realms, the uncreated light, is infusing your body with this celestial light. Okay? Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Down into the warmth of the infrared
Then
lower chakra too.
then it no longer matters. Okay? In other words, it's a progressive exercise.
Okay.
Okay? So just try that. See how that works for you. How'd that work out? Is there any difference?
Well, I found it easier.
Found it easier.
I think 'cause I'm really exhausted. I hardly slept last night.
Huh?
So when I did the other one, my physicality felt like sludge. So it was difficult for me to do the connection.
Uh-huh. And this time?
This was easier to just focus on the light aspect of it.
You had the same experience?
Yeah, a lot easier.
Interesting. Okay. How about you, Jim?
I felt a movie came in where I think The Matrix, where the guy, I forget what part it was, where the machine just like blew up and there was light just spread out.
Oh, that's the very end, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. How about you guys?
It was a reminder, because I still have this tendency to think that celestial light is out there.
Other than you.
Well, it's sort of like I have to get to the outer edges of where I am to get there. And just now it was like, it's already here. It's like, it was in this, I still have this kind of circular, sphere-like thing that's going on. And it was like, it's the celestial light is right here inside my sphere. It was different.
Good. All right. You get a star. Not really.
No,
You are a star.
we're all
There's no
stars.
stars. What about you, Queenie?
I have kind of a blend of all these things, and then I think most prevalent on my mind is, God, I have to remember to practice this, because I can feel myself at the cellular level. Like I can feel myself, and that's the way I should be feeling. And I just seem to forget to practice these things.
Okay. So let's see how what he says about it matches to what you've been experiencing. So this is the light upon a light. This means that at the end of the exhaling, you're conscious of your aura again. You don't identify with it, but you become very conscious of it. So once again, you're conscious of the very warm radiation of the heart, which is just like a sun, a radiant sun. How's that?
Say that again, please.
This means that at the end of the exhaling, you're conscious of your own aura again. You do not identify with it, but you become very conscious of it. So once again, you're conscious of the very warm radiation of the heart, which is just like a sun, a radiant sun.
Can you discuss do not identify with it?
With the aura?
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of wondering about that myself.
Does it mean
I think
don't
that-
come attached?
Yeah. It's like you're so much more than just that, right? That's like your it's your localization, right? Whereas your being is much more than this localization. We have to have it because this is where we are right now. But if you'll remember from the lessons on the philosophy of the soul, your being is really the whole universe, and we limit it in order to, and so you don't want to so closely identify with that you forget that you're all this other stuff too. You okay?
Yeah.
Is that a little bit of a shock to you?
No, I just felt like I was dissolving into it all a little too much.
Oh, okay. Don't do that. You need both.
Yeah.
Which is, we get very focused on the one thing, on our personal identity, so focused. You know, when let me back up here. You know, one of Pir Vilayat's favorite sayings, if you want to understand the light of the soul, look into the eyes of a baby. He said that all the time. And I thought about that a lot, and what I realized is that when you know, I've raised kids. When you have a little baby, they don't know that they're separate. You know this, right? Anybody who's ever been a parent or hung around kids knows this. They don't know they're separate. It's when they hit around 2.5 that they begin to realize, oh, there's something wrong here, and that's when the trouble starts. You know? Yeah, terrible twos, exactly, because there's a sudden separation, but the baby doesn't know how to describe it or how to discuss it or how to communicate with it because they haven't really got communication down yet, right? And so it's very frustrating. And then, as we pass through that stage of frustration, we get into a stage of actual separation by 7. By the time a kid's 7 years old, they have separated and become very focused on what is external to us. And it's only later, much later, that you begin to turn inward. I'm extraordinarily surprised that I've got this 15-year-old boy in England who's read my book and is just determined to be a Sufi. Now, I won't let him do that till he's 18, but nevertheless, he is determined. He wants to learn. He's only 15, so that was really a surprise. Generally, it doesn't happen until mid-30s because there's all of this excitement about being in the world, right? And then you get to about 35 or so, and you begin to realize that, maybe this isn't so great after all, or maybe there's more, or whatever it was. When did you make the shift and decide to get out of corporate and become a massage therapist?
Late 30s.
It's about when we met.
Yeah.
You were still in the corporate world when we met.
Yeah. Well, I knew that I knew the shift was to be done, but I was afraid for a long time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can imagine why. Mm-hmm. Taking your 6-figure income and pretending I don't need that. Right, sure. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Okay. So is that helpful in that respect? Okay. According to the Sufis, the souls of men are made of light, and it's the light of intelligence rather than a physical light. It's a light that thrusts its light upon all things and makes things clear. So they call it the light that sees rather than the light that is seen. Should I read that again? Yeah. This is one of... If you really want to go into this, I'll give you the title of a book that you can buy. Philosophy of Light by Shahabudin Suhrawardi.
That was Shahabudin Suhrawardi?
Right, Shape of Light. Yeah, Sheikh Al-Nur. I have it upstairs, but you can't have it. Get your own. According to the Sufis, the souls of men are made of light, and it's light of intelligence rather than a physical light. It's a light that thrusts its light upon all things and makes things clear. So they call it the light that sees rather than the light that is seen. Put that in your conceptual mind and smoke it. How does that feel?
Chew it.
Chew it.
Chew it until it becomes liquid.
Okay, and this is where it gets pretty cool. This is all Pir Vilayat. The souls of men and women are the fragments of the archangels of the planets and the archangel of the sun, of the solar system, and the archangels of the galaxies. Isn't that cool? The souls of men and women are the fragments of the archangels of the planets, the archangel of the sun, of the solar system, and the archangels of the galaxies.
Oh.
All this is part of the one and only being who is God, which means the light of lights. This light that has been fragmenting itself down till that minute fragment of light that is the soul of man. I say this so that we will be able to somehow experience our relationship with the hierarchies of beings of light. Every fragment is continually in touch with the group of which it is a fragment, being the divine glance. The glance is the luminous intelligence which thrusts its light upon all things. So you know that there are two stages. One is, I am the eyes through which God sees, and the other one is, I am the divine glance. Okay? Everybody got all that and no
Oh, yeah.
problem?
Been there, done that, right?
For this practice, here, you have to adopt the second stage. Being conscious of being the extension of the hierarchies of intelligence, luminous intelligences. That is the word that is used by the Sufis, hierarchies of luminous intelligences, which are all the ramification of the Nur al-Anwar, the light of lights.
Is
What
it
happened?
N-U-R?
Nur al-Anwar.
N-U-R?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Anwar, A-N-W-A-R. What happened is that a fragment got itself alienated from its source, and all you have to do is to establish your lines of communication with the origin of your consciousness.
Repeat them, mate, por favor.
So I start back at the beginning? Or how far back do I have to go?
That would be yours.
Isn't this fun?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start all over again. The souls of men and women are the fragments of the archangels of the planets and the archangels of the sun, of the solar system and the galaxies. Let's just start with that. And just imagine that you are a fragment of all of those archangels, yet you have an existence. And you have the capacity to conceptualize all this. That's the cool part.
If we're fragments, then
Remember that there's two things going on here. One is that identity, individual identity, right? And the other is that the rest of your being is the universe. Keep that in mind, please.
okay.
Okay? That's the hard part, I think.
Do that again. Say that one again.
What did I say?
The individual is.
You have individuation on one hand, and on the other hand, you are the universe.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Sufis are very clear on this.
As opposed to part of the universe.
Yes. Right. You are the whole thing.
Each
One of the things that the Sufis say, well, Pir Vlad said it because it's modern stuff, but you can find it in other writings, in Ibn Arabi, for instance, is that your most basic identifier is the DNA code in your genes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That DNA code has the capacity to recreate the universe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
And
like
do you have them in your cheeks?
Have what?
I had to. Had to.
That went right over my head. Yes.
So if we are part of the divine, I mean, it means that the notion of head and total loss is not possible.
That's right.
That-
That's right. You
It
can't.
what?
It's not possible. Even though people get into a state where they believe it's true.
Yeah.
It was not possible?
Total loss.
Oh.
Wasn't that the one of the basic laws of physics? Energy is never lost. It's
Yeah, it can't be.
transformed.
Right. Yeah. It just changes from a wave to a particle and then back.
Or into another form of matter.
Yeah. Okay. All of this is part of the one and only being who is God, which means the light of lights. This is where it gets cool. That has been fragmenting itself down until that minute fragment of light that is the soul of man. I say this so that we will be able to somehow experience our relationship with the hierarchies of beings of light. Every fragment is continually in touch with the group of which it is a fragment, being the divine glance. Another way to state it is the palace of mirrors, where everything reflects everything else all the time, or everything is everywhere all the time. Okay? Even though your individual identity insists that you are located in a spot in space, you are still continually in touch with all that the universe is. Are you wondering if I'm okay?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay. Ready for the next part? The glance is the luminous intelligence which thrusts its light upon all things. So you know that there are two stages. One is, I am the eyes through which God sees. You know, that's a kind of something we strive for, to have that experience. The eyes through which God sees. And the other one is, I am the divine glance. So not only are you absorbing information, you are also radiating divine intent. Okay? So there's an intrinsic responsibility involved there too. For this practice, you have to adopt the second stage. You're conscious of being the extension of the hierarchies of intelligence, luminous intelligences. This is the word that is used by the Sufis, hierarchies of luminous intelligences, which are all the ramification of the Nur al-Anwar, the light of lights. What happened is that a fragment got itself alienated from its source, and all you have to do is establish your lines of communication with the origin of your consciousness. So why don't we just sit and see how that works for you? Get yourself into a nice relaxed state, and then imagine or conceptualize or imagine a being of light that is an archangel of some that you can relate to, of a planet, of the sun, of a galaxy, of a star, and see how it feels. Now this might be a practice you have to work on for a little bit, for a couple of months or a couple of years, whatever it takes. Now, instead of just thinking of very abstract lights of intelligence, you could start getting into the consciousness of the archangels of the planets and stars. You don't want to just get into a fantasy, but if you tune yourself to the sun and all the glory that accompanies a sunrise, realize that that's only the outer manifestation of the being of the sun. Of course, that doesn't mean that the archangel of the sun has a body or a figure or a countenance like that of a human being. But once you've established your connection with the being of the sun, rather than just the light, the physical light, such as it is experienced from the earth, then you have access to further and more cosmic beings of light. Remember this principle. It's not good enough just to try to contact that being. One has to experience oneself as that being. I mean, get into the consciousness of that being, the sun, archangel, or whatever. You have to become like the sun, or bring the being of the sun through. And beyond that, still more cosmic beings. Each being is a fragment of the group being that is hierarchically above. Okay, how's that feel?
Spacey.
Big.
Release.
A release. Okay. It's fun to do, isn't it?
It was kind of interesting because I've had this little progression of this sphere, and with this one, it was like the boundaries of the sphere exploded out.
So you push through
I pushed through
your.
this little conceptual boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's his movie scene.
You're having an effect on me.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. Now we pass to the next degree and see the connection between our glance and the light of luminous intelligence that becomes consciousness. We are now able to start working with the third eye. One shouldn't work with the third eye if one is projecting one's own glance, one's personal glance. But if one is connected up one's personal glance with its origin, the first thing to do is to work with the eyes. There are different practices emitted by your physical eyes. So think of your eyes as being like the headlamps of a car and project these beams forward in the dark. And we're going to go over this several times because this is a very important practice. Imagine that these headlamps are being projected in the dark. Now connect up your glance with the whole hierarchy of beings of light and think that your glance is like an extension of the light that sees, as we called it, instead of the light that is seen, the light of the hierarchies of the beings of light, of the pure luminous intelligences. And that should give you a tremendous intensity and also a penetration to your glance. Okay? Get all that? No? Go through it again? Okay, we're going to work with the eyes. Think of your eyes as being like the headlamps of a car and project those beams forward in the dark. So just try that.
This is with your eyes closed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise you get distracted. So you're projecting your eyes as if they are headlamps of a car. Now, next step is to connect up your glance with the whole hierarchy of beings of light and think that your glance is like an extension of the light that sees, as we called it, instead of the light that is seen. So it's not you, it's everybody. Let's work on that for a while.
linking up with the light it sees.
Then you work on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just one of those practices you just have to keep working on. Okay?
And it kind of felt like, you know, the searchlights that you see in
Yeah.
this kind of like, okay, where's everybody else?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Searching for German bombers to shoot at, that kind of thing?
No.
That dates you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was also having a challenging time linking up. You know, on a retreat, it just happens. But to do it on demand,
Mm-hmm.
as need practice.
Yeah. And it's a good thing to be able to do. But again, you can tap into a memory of an experience that you had on a retreat and bring it into your normal everyday life.
I'll try that.
Okay?
Mm.
So that works. Did you turn the soup on?
I had turned it on.
You did turn it on.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the outset, of course, oh, wait a minute, I didn't finish this. Tap your glance, hold hierarchies of beings of light. And that should give you a tremendous intensity and also a penetration to your glance. So that's one of those things where you're thinking, oh, I'm going to have a penetrating glance. Watch out, you guys.
It is. It's arresting to people.
I know.
And we had taken a healing practice over the course of several years, and we did a lot of study on the
Oh, the
healing
glance.
glance.
Yeah.
The glance.
Yeah.
And it was really a powerful thing.
Yeah, you got to tone it down when you're with people that aren't, tuned into what we do.
Mm.
What I do is I remember compassion.
Mm.
Whoever comes, because I work with people all the time, so that's at the forefront. When I always thinking compassion.
It softens.
I hope so. Yeah. Even then, sometimes it's people are scared. They're not used to compassion.
Yeah.
Mm.
What do you do, Sarah?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Right now, I don't have an answer.
Okay. There'll be a test later.
Get ready.
Okay, here we go. How are we doing? Okay. So at the outset, of course, the glance is set at infinity. And now, when you open your eyes, you should be able to keep your eyes at infinity and not allow your eyes to be refocused by the objects in front of you. So you don't see, you just cast light. Okay, you want to try that? So close your eyes, do the searchlight thing or the headlamp. If you can tune into the beams of light, do that. And then open your eyes and see if you can maintain that look into infinity and not be caught up in the environment. See how that works. Pretty tricky. It's a very important practice because that's the way of communing with people with light. As you're talking with people, you get into that focus and people pick it up right away. They begin to be aware of their light, and before you know where you are, both of you are really high, exchanging and illuminating each other with the light of your eye. Try it. It's a very tangible way of doing what you want to do while conversing with people. You're involved with life, a very important practice. So you guys can just continue to work on this after you leave here. Any of these light practices are fine. None of these are restricted.
As far as practicing them with someone else, even.
I suppose you'd want to have their agreement,
Well, yeah,
or not.
yeah.
You don't necessarily have to tell them what you're doing. Right?
Yeah.
Just see what happens. You know, it's like getting on a subway and
Right.
turning the train into a happy train
Mhm.
instead of a grumpy train.
Mhm.
I don't know if that would work in Tokyo. Pretty grumpy.
Pretty grumpy.
Get that suicide rate down,
Yeah, right?
heart attack rate.
So we watched this movie last night called Happy.
Ness. Is it? Happiness.
Happy.
No,
It's
just
just
happy.
happy? It's
Yeah.
just happy.
which was fundamentally a bunch of experts, psychologists and psychiatrists and neurologists talking about what makes people happy. And it turned out that what makes people happy is being with other people who are happy. And that was pretty much it. It took a whole movie. But, you know, it was an interesting movie anyway.
Simplicity and altruism and
Yeah, all those things, but still,
not things.
the major ingredient was being around friends and family that you like.
Mhm.
Right? That was
Well,
a biggie.
He actually, there was one researcher that said it didn't necessarily have to be good relationships, but being around
Around
friends and
people,
family,
yeah.
being around people
Yeah.
Yeah.
as an extended network, a supportive community.
Which makes me wonder why there's so many unhappy people who have big families.
Because they're not connected.
I guess so. The one of the example was this. There were several examples that they used, surprising examples. One of them was a Cajun family in Louisiana, somewhere out in the bayou. Big family. They have lunch together every day.
It's like 45 people or something.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they showed them, standing with the crabs,
Yeah.
whole table full of crabs, and just enjoying one another.
And they have almost no material possessions. They built their own houses. Did all that. He said, we didn't call any plumbers. What do I need money for?
Well, it's very much like farmers. They're
Mhm.
very
Yeah.
self-sufficient
Mm-hmm.
and self-reliant.
You got to be.
So yeah.
Okay. So that's the key to happiness: being in this group.
They did do the study in Rosetta, which is a town not very far from Stroudsburg, because they thought, I think it was the incident of heart attacks was so low in men, and they found that it was due to the large family network of the Italian community there that was so supportive and so extensive. And that really boosted their health.
Huh.
They had gardens, and they also, gardens grew fig trees, their own garlic, stuff like that. But there was
The big thing was that interconnectedness.
yeah, sport network too.
I cannot tell you how many times someone has said to me, "What I really want is family. I want the group. Not so much about spiritual unfoldment. I just want to be with people that like me."
Yeah,
Very, very common for people to say that. And it's understandable. It's what we want.
oh, I mean, I have my, my family here that it's my life.
Okay. Do you need a transfusion? Okay, do this every day until it becomes strong in you. Just practice with the headlamps. You have to be stronger than the environment. You do not allow yourself to be conditioned by the environment, and that's the key. Because ultimately what we often do is we allow the environment to dictate to us who we are. And when you think about people, one of the things that I have noticed continually is the way a person looks, what their facial features are and their physical features are, the culture will often demand that they be this or that, and will not allow them to be other than that. So, it's like to push beyond that is really critical. Really, I mean, the Helen Keller model. She should have been in an institution and cared for the rest of your life, and she just refused. You are thrusting light. The light of the heavens is coming through you. Every now and again, you could, as you inhale, close your eyes, turn your eyeballs upward, and get into that attunement of getting into the consciousness of the intelligences, the whole hierarchy of beings of light. Hold your breath, and then as you exhale, open your eyes and cast that light forward. If you get a shock when you open your eyes, one tends to adjust oneself to the physical world. Overcome that shock and just remember your attunement. It's only for a short while when you're exhaling. Then as you inhale, go back into your attunement again. So he's giving you an idea about how you can make this a permanent practice. And this is the critical one, okay? Because we want to, it's almost one of the things that can happen here is, the Svengali effect. Okay, now I get to be powerful and run the world. But that's kind of not how it works. There's something that Paramahansa Yogananda talks about in his book, that if you do that kind of thing, what you're doing is it's like you're winding up a rubber band, and you just keep winding and winding, and what happens when you do that?
The band snaps.
Eventually the band snaps, yeah. So, follow this advice. Do not identify with your personal glance, with the glance of your eyes. Your center is way above the crown chakra, somewhere. It's not in your eyes. Your eyes are just an extension of the glance of your eyes. The light from the eyes is just an extension from all that light that you are, that which includes the hierarchies of beings of light. Okay? Is this starting to make sense now a little bit? So once again, on the one hand, it's your individuation, and on the other hand, it's the breadth of your being. You're tapping into that breadth. That is your trueness, your truth. Okay? Do not be afraid of opening your eyes as long as you keep your concentration. And if you want to protect your glance from the shock of contact with the physical world, you just have to find yourself in a transfigured world. You shouldn't let your consciousness get right down in the physical perspective of the universe. Just think that you are experiencing that which transpires as being that which appears. You say that which transpires behind that which appears. Well, now he's saying it as being that which appears.
Could you say that over a little slower? That's big. That whole transpires behind that which appears.
Can we go over it again?
Yes.
Just think that you are experiencing that which transpires as being that which appears. Okay? So, this continual need to limit the experience of the hierarchies of light in order to experience physical reality is a transpiration of the desire of the one being to express itself through all of these various layers of intelligence. That which transpires. Is that helpful? No? Do I have to say it another way?
Yeah, maybe that would help rectify the.
Okay, you understand that you are in a state of limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But that's not the truth of your being. It was an agreement that you made. I'm going to limit myself in order to experience this state, in order to enable the one being to understand itself. In other words, you're an aspect, a minute aspect of that overall desire, divine intent. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nevertheless, there is a continual flow of intentional energy through all these planes of reality
That transpire.
right into you. And as you activate it in your being, you are enabling that transpiration to continue to unfold.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm. That which transpires through that which appears. So,
As being that which appears.
as being.
Yeah. We tend to look at things in terms of our judgment values. Our assumptions about what's taking place.
Right.
Our definitions of what is correct and what is incorrect. What is moral and what is immoral. That's how we look at things.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's not what's going on. This is where we separate the men from the boys, so to speak. All right? I'm going to just finish this and then we'll take a break.
Okay.
I think we're at that point. This is a lot to absorb, I know. What appears is just an illusion anyway. It's not the way things are. It's an optical illusion. So don't let yourself be caught in it. You have to find yourself in a transfigured world. That's the meaning of transfiguration. I'll give you a clue. You get to a point when you say, well, what is all this? What is all of this? What is this physical world? What am I? What am I doing here? What is this body? You get very confused because it all seems so like a kind of dream. It doesn't seem real. It's what I call finding yourself in a transfigured world. It's distrusting the evidence of the senses, and only then are the spheres of light much more real than the appearance of the physical world. You see, the appearance of the physical world bullies your consciousness. So resist that pull of gravity. Do not let yourself be conditioned by the appearance. And that gives you tremendous power. Okay, is that helpful?
Mm-hmm. It's almost like the waterfall.
Why do you say that? The water's going to fall whether you look at it or not?
Mm-hmm. It's it's an event that can't help itself.
Ah, good. Okay. Any further confusions that need to be expressed? I mean, I've confused you enough, I think. You feel okay? Okay? You're not confused? I'm
Confused.
failing then if you're not confused.
No, I'm confused, but
Okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want you thinking about this. I want you thinking about your concepts of who you think you are and what the universe is, and all of the judgments that you make about what's going on around you. We all have this whole set of value judgments that we impose upon the world, and that's okay. But things extend beyond that. It's not what's really taking place. Although it looks like it is. All right? Okay, so let's do noontime prayers. Most gracious Lord, Master, Messiah, and Savior of humanity, we greet Thee with all humility. Thou art the first cause and the last effect, the divine light and the spirit of guidance, Alpha and Omega.
Thy light is in all forms, thy love in all beings.
In a loving mother, in a kind father, in an innocent child, in a helpful friend, in an inspiring teacher. Allow us to recognize Thee in all Thy holy names and forms, as Rama, as Krishna, as Shiva, as Buddha. Let us know Thee as Abraham, as Solomon, as Zarathustra, as Moses, as Jesus, as Muhammad, and in many other names and forms, known and unknown to the world. We adore Thy past. Thy presence deeply enlightens our being, and we look for Thy blessing in the future. O Messenger, Christ, Nabi, the Rasul of God, Thou whose heart constantly reaches upward, Thou comest on earth with the message, as Dharma from above, and Dharma decays, and speakest the word that is put into Thy mouth, as the light filleth the crescent moon. Let the star of the divine light shining in Thy heart be reflected in the hearts of Thy devotees. May the message of God reach far and wide, illuminating and making the whole of humanity as one single family in the parenthood of God. Pour upon us Thy love and Thy light. 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 A torch in the darkness, a staff during my weakness, a rock in the weariness of life. Thou, my Master, makest earth a paradise. Thy thought giveth me unearthly joy. Thy light illuminateth my life's path. Thy words inspire me with divine wisdom. I follow in Thy footsteps, which lead me to the eternal goal. Comforter of the brokenhearted, support of those in need, friend of the lovers of truth, blessed Master, Thou art the prophet of God. Amen. Okay. Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 5th of February, is the Urs of Harold Nayak Khan. And Urs is the anniversary of his death. He died on February the 5th, 1928, I believe. Pirlay's father. So there's people do lots of different things for the Urs of a major Sufi teacher. They're doing it 4 days at the abode.
Really?
Yeah, which is unusual. Doing 4 days at the Dargah, which is his actual tomb in Delhi, which is also unusual. Usually it's just like an afternoon.
Will Pirzia be there?
No, he's at the abode, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to do just a little something, and I realize that some of you have no familiarity really with Nayak Khan, and that's okay. You'll get it. So, Alima, if you would.
So with Hazrat Nayak Khan, there was a time before I even knew what Sufism is or anything, where I had a visitation in a dream. And it's only been recently that I realized that it was the presence of Hazrat Nayak Khan. I was like, oh, there's like a presaging what would come later, because it was probably another 5 years before I ran into a Sufi sheikh and became introduced to the writings of Hazrat Nayak Khan. But the writings, I felt like an immediate connection. So it just has changed my life in that way. And I had done reading of lots of different spiritual traditions and people who were considered saints. And this hymn, I feel like there was a heart connection for me. And I really love the Urs, the annual celebration of his death, and honoring. I feel privileged to be able to do that kind of honoring of such a wonderful person. It's helped me realize where my path is going.
Was he 45 or 40?
I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, quite young.
So go ahead, keep on.
No, more about him?
What I'd like you to do is to just,
Oh, kind of.
Yeah.
So is there anyone here that's had an experience with feeling a connection or some kind of...
I had an Asiatic dream.
You did?
And only in hindsight do I call it that. Because at the time it was still probably one of the most incredible dreams I've ever had. And it was like a pulsing of unconditional love that came from infinity. And I'm not sure if it came in in the dream it was in winged heart form. I don't remember, but that's what the image was for me, because that's the way I could speak about it. And at the time I was doing some white on white embossed cards, and I went from I was doing full-time artwork, and I made a commitment to do that in my life, and I went from doing etchings and I wanted to get away from the ink, and I wanted to go towards the light, so I wanted to use just white on white to create images. So I illustrated this dream, and it became one of my embossed cards. And I made these embossings into card form so that they would be more available to more people, rather than put them in prints and frames and then not, it's, and I called it Heartgate, and it was, it was the hearts that came, they were small in the beginning, and then there was a gate, and they came through the gate, called Heartgate. And as I entered into the realm of Sufi study and practices, and I guess especially the work with the heart and the healing order and the meditations with Pure Wyatt, I realized that that was and still is what that is.
Did you have connections with the writing or was it
Connections with the writing?
practices?
I didn't really do much reading at all for years. It was mostly with practices and notes from my from the retreats that I did. That I went to silent retreats, and went to years and years of silent retreats, and I would always refer back into my notes and read them, and it was I always liked coming home to myself, my real self. I just thought that there was never any doesn't fit kind of thing. It would always help me through through whatever. It's like I guess guidance, maybe, this source for guidance, and it took me a long time to realize how much, that I would hear about guides or initiation and sort of separated it into more, I don't want to be in a cult kind of thing, but this is, feels very home-like for me, but it was always the truth, I guess, that's where I would go for solace, guidance, answers, questions. And I don't know how long ago it was that I started reading finally. I had just a few volumes that I would read a little bit. So
There's a set of message volumes right up in there, the orange books.
I have them upstairs.
We have them upstairs.
Yeah.
So people had done dictation of lectures that Hazrat Inayat Khan had done, and they got put together in a nice form and then printed into volumes and grouped by kind of topics. So they're available to read. You can still buy them, even though and they're still in print, right?
Yep, Sir Wire
So,
republished.
and there are old ones that you can get secondhand.
And then there's Bohandas in India published as well.
And you can get them electronically for it's
And-
only like $2.99 or $1.99 volume on
Actually, you can get them electronically for free
if you have a PC.
And,
if you have a PC. That's true.
There's this book here too. It's called Hazrat Inayat Khan, The Complete Sayings. So it's a nice way to get started with things that he's said. And how I use this book sometimes is I just
read out of it.
I just
We're going
hold
to
it out
Patience.
and I just pick something, and then whatever comes up, I use that as a meditation when I do almost every night I do a reading. So then I do a contemplation on something that Hazrat Inayat Khan, something short, what he said. So it's, you can use it in lots of different ways, other than just reading it cover to cover.
Mm-hmm.
I can pass this around and take a look at it.
Just open it and read. What's the first thing that comes to your eye?
Aphorisms.
Yeah, just read what's the aphorism then.
That's
Oh
it.
yeah, all right, go to
Try
the
it
next.
in.
All right.
Yeah.
Have called him the architect, but I know him as the actor on the stage of life.
Okay.
As water in a fountain flows as one stream, but falls in many drops, divided by time and space, so are the revelations of one stream of truth. To analyze love is to destroy love.
That is his picture, Baba.
Mm-hmm.
The fire of devotion purifies the heart of a devotee and leads to spiritual freedom.
all conventionality that has limited the life of man and has removed it far from nature comes from sex distinction.
So there that is.
Go ahead and read your own for yourself. Huh?
Oh, okay.
Do one for yourself.
Oh. I got Katam. O thou, who art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the Lord of heaven and earth, open our hearts that we may hear thy voice, which constantly comes from within. Disclose to us thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us thy great goodness, teach us thy loving forgiveness, raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide men. Send us the peace of thy divine spirit, and unite us all in thy perfect being.
Okay, thank you.
Is anyone else would like to share their experience or connection with Hazrat Inayat Khan? Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
Having an experience of a major being is it's a gift, I guess. Can be a difficulty, I suppose. Imagine for a moment that you're allowing yourself to be a little more open than you currently feel yourself to be. In other words, take whatever state that you're in and push it a little bit, expand it just a touch. Not a lot, doesn't have to be a lot. At all, just a little bit. And then into that space, see if you can allow this hierarchy that we've been talking about all morning. Not as some kind of otherworldly creature or unidentifiable energy, but as a friend. I think maybe that's where we get kind of caught up. We forget that what we're really dealing with here is friendship. That was almost one of the first things that someone said to me at my very first camp when I was for Tom Miller actually said to me, don't be afraid of Pierre Belaya, he's your friend. And I didn't understand that for the longest time. So imagine this being that is hovering about now, in company with many other beings, because whenever you do spiritual work, beings show up. They just do. That was what was it? How did Muhammad say it? It's in one of the hadiths that they don't quote very much. Something like, whenever I give a sermon, the air around me gets very crowded with the genies, the jinn world, something like that. I can't remember exactly the quote. And that's what happens. But also the hierarchy comes. And if you allow that presence in your being, everything changes. It just does. The burden becomes lighter. So I had, let me think, gosh, I think I've told the story before, I'll tell it again. Back when I was a hippie, unsuccessfully back to the land hippie, I was really bad at it. But I used to buy books, There was this bookshop in Washington, D.C. called Yes, which has since turned into a restaurant I just discovered the other day. It's not a bookstore anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same logo. Interesting to see that. And they were one of the major sources of esoteric books, 40 years ago. And I bought this book from them because I used to read through their catalog voraciously, read the description of each book. And then I'd pick books by their description and buy them. But I was living in Oregon at the time, and so it was all catalog thing, right? And I bought this book, which appeared and turned out to be unreadable because of the calligraphy. It was all calligraphy throughout the whole thing. You couldn't read it. And it was Toward the One, which is Pierre Belaya's book, which he didn't like either. He thought it was really good for sitting on. That was his feeling about it. I have 2 copies upstairs if somebody wants to see it.
Or sit on it.
Or sit on it. And in the back of the book was a poster. And I did like the poster because I took the poster and I put it on my bedroom wall, and I used to sit on my bed and read it. It had these various quotes, a lot of quotes from the guy on there. And at the time I didn't know. I had no idea who this person was that had written this thing. I didn't know who had written the book. I just liked the poster. And the poster said, the major quote on the poster at the top of the poster was, my heart has become an ocean, beloved, since thou hast poured thy love into it. And that's one of the quotes in that book. But I didn't know that at the time. I used to just sit there and stare at that and wonder what in the world that means. Who's this beloved character? I had no idea. I really didn't. And, it wasn't until, much later, well, not that much later, 5 years maybe, that I met Pierre Belaya, and off we went. To have a personal experience of one of these beings, like now, I have this Murid that lives in Nova Scotia. We've never actually met. So I've been all online and on the telephone. She's been my Murid for 10 years. And when we first started talking online, she basically needed somebody to talk to because she had this horrible man she was living with. And then she tells me, I just had this dream. And I was in this room. There was a table, and these guys were standing around this table, and they were asking me to join them. And I said, "Oh, who were they? Did you know who they were?" He said, "Yeah, they said who they were." And she rattled off 7 or 8 names of everybody. She had no clue who these people were, right? She didn't know anything about Sufism. Some of the 7 or 8 major Sufis in our history, including the Inayat Khan, were all there, kind of waiting, asking her to join.
And she remembered.
I was very envious of that dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she asked me who it was.
All you got was a lousy poster.
Right? I know. Yeah, but she had this dream. It was too funny.
Wow.
So then I told her who it was and what I did, and then she said, "Okay, I want to do this too." So I initiated her on the internet. She was the second one I did that for. But that's the kind of thing that can happen. She had no clue who it was.
How was she in touch with you if you were not her guide?
We just started talking on the internet one day. How you do?
No.
You don't do that. Oh, well.
No,
then-
never done that.
Okay.
With someone you don't know?
Sure.
Yeah, never done that.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
Yeah. How? How does that happen? Anyway.
Does that happen? You've never
Was
done
it
it? Oh my gosh, I
through
talked to
your
people.
blog?
No.
It probably was through the blog, yeah.
Yeah.
It was probably through the blog. When I used to write a blog. It's just half my Murids are on the internet.
Yeah.
People I've never met.
People you've never met.
Yep.
Yeah.
How many countries?
15 or 16, I think. Last
Amazing.
count.
Amazing.
It's a new way, people, I loved it,
Yeah. Yeah.
the internet. Anyway, so that's what's possible for you. There's an essence. It's like when you finally let go of the need to be intimately in control, these things open up. That's what happens. As long as you insist on being in control, it's hard for them to break through. But when you're in that state of vulnerability, innocence, childlike essence, then these experiences can open up for you. Okay? So, Sarah, would you get us started on the rest of the day?
Sure. I was just thinking of a dream I had last night.
Yeah? What was?
I never sleep when I'm in that room.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's not your fault. But I had a dream and I thought, who is this person?
You were sleeping.
Yeah.
I know you were sleeping.
Well, because
Now I
you heard me
know.
snoring. I don't think that I do. I don't think that I sleep when I'm in there.
Well, you do.
Yeah.
Is the head facing north in that room?
No.
Interesting. 'Cause I had trouble.
I
I
mean,
thought I had
face-
trouble.
faces southwest. Anyway, the dream.
Oh.
You can't say that and not say what it was.
Oh. Well, I think it might have been Hazrat Inayat Khan. Because it was a person in robes and very fierce and very insistent. And the robes were open at the heart. And that's Yeah, I don't know if I can describe it completely yet. I'm still sitting with it.
Okay.
Here is a much simpler practice. Kind of builds on what we did this morning. So we'll start with our eyes closed and inhale. And as you exhale, converge the beams of your eyes into a spotlight somewhere out in front of you. And now we'll also start working with the third eye. So be aware of and concentrate on a beam of light that descends through the crown center and then is refracted forward as a beam through some point in your forehead. Observe and concentrate on a shaft of light coming in through the crown and being redirected forward and beaming out through your forehead. And this point is related to the pineal gland in the middle, a little bit lower down than the middle of the brain, which we talked about in lesson 11. So with each exhalation, observe that the beam is aimed at the spotlight, which is created by the convergence of the two beams of your eyes. Seeing the light beam coming down through your crown, being refracted forward through the forehead and converging at some point with those beams that come out through your eyes. It's very important to draw the light from very high up and not simply to concentrate on the beam that comes from the third eye, but link it up with that shaft of light that's descending. And now on the inhalation, reverse the process. Turn your eyeballs upward as the third eye turns in on itself, turns itself upwards, and your consciousness will rise in a fountain of light at the top of the head, and you'll reach right up. Exhaling, bringing all that light down into the third eye and through the third eye. And you can try doing this, opening the eyes on the exhalation. And instead of concentrating on the light emitted by your physical eyes, concentrate entirely on the third eye. So as you inhale, turning the eyes upward, turning the third eye upward, right up through that fountain of energy through the crown. exhale, that beam of light coming down through the crown and then forward through the third eye and converging with the beams of your two eyes. This is the secret of looking into the souls of men. Do not concentrate on, do not simply identify with that beam that emerges from the pineal. You must link it up with the shaft of light that descends. Otherwise, you develop a kind of hypnotic gaze, and that's just what we don't want. It must always be beautiful, impersonal, heavenly, pure, and untainted. The Sufis call it generous light. It's not an inquiring ego light, it's a giving light, a loving light.
So how's that?
Ooh.
You look surprised. Are you surprised or to discover that you can do such a complex practice? Did you do such a complex practice? Did it? Okay. And it is.
Very complex.
Yeah. How about that? You awake? Okay. Just check. You look awfully comfy. So how'd that feel?
Otherworldly.
Really? Okay.
My forehead feels like it's pushing forward.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I felt that before. Gets to a point where you don't want to talk about it, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. More Pure Light. One can avoid getting into a very personal trip by thinking, for example, of the glance of Hazrat Inayat Khan, a very sacred, divine glance that looks right into the soul, but is not in any way inquisitive or personal. A glance that has become totally purified, so one would like to say, bathe your glance in heavenly light. Take a bath of light, a shower of light. One way of doing that is to think of oneself as a crystal. One is both things. One is the light that shines through the crystal, and one is also the crystal, a hybrid. There's that part that is transcendent and that part which is eternal. We come across this all the time. So let's say the molecules of your body are like molecules of a crystal, and there are different types of light that we've been talking about. There's the light of the aura. There's the light of the heavens. There's the third one, which is the light of divine intelligence. It is the light of divine intelligence which is looking through the crystal, and the light of the heavens that is illuminating the crystal. And you're the crystal. That was me saying that. The whole idea is to identify oneself totally with being a being of light and then distinguishing the three different aspects of this. Okay, you understand why he said that? We get, so often we just get to float off into Never Never Land and not realize that there's a science to all of this. The idea is to understand the science as well as to have the experience. Okay, it's all very well and good to have this wonderful, beautiful experience. Well, what are you going to do with it? Right? To understand the science of it allows you to actually utilize these experiences and these energies in a very positive and useful way. Otherwise, you're just free. Okay?
Otherwise, what?
You're just playing.
Yeah. Okay.
You will notice that anyone that we revere as a prophet or a master or someone that has some, a teacher, right? They not only have these experiences, they know what to do with them. They use them, or they study them, or they try to continually expand their knowledge, and in an intellectual way, right? Okay. Okay, here we are. Let's see. There's three different aspects of this. The aura. Oh, here we go. The three different aspects. One, the aura, which is the individuated aspect. Remember I spoke earlier about that's just the energy field around you, which goes off into the universe, but still comes from you. It's located, has a definite location. Two, the uncreated life of the celestial spheres, which is the cosmic aspect. And three, the light of divine intelligence, which is the transcendental aspect. Okay? One, the aura, which is the individuated aspect. Two, the uncreated light of the celestial spheres, which is the cosmic aspect. And three, the light of the divine intelligence, which is the transcendental aspect. So keep on practicing and practicing until this becomes so much a part of one's way of thinking and of feeling and of identifying oneself that eventually it's there all the time in one's daily rapport with people. The consequence is that one brings light to people and one is oneself luminous. One is always undergoing a kind of bath of light, and thoughts become absolutely crystal clear and the emotions become very, very beautiful. Suppose that's true? You think so? Why do you think so? Because I say so? Because Spirit Guide says so?
I remember that.
Okay. Good. You hear that?
What do you remember
She said-
from?
What do you remember from? You just know that you remember it, right? Yeah.
And I mean, I touch on it throughout, my own life, but hearing it, I guess it's a blend of the experience of touching on it and this manifestation, hearing it, but then the pure thing that can't be spoken.
What is the
The
difference?
Yeah.
To have it as an innate knowledge.
Yeah. Innate.
Okay.
What's the difference between the last two lights?
Celestial light and transcendental light?
Transcendental and the cosmic one? What is the
Uncreated light of the celestial spheres, which is the cosmic aspect. That is that which is all, the all-pervading light that is. It just exists. And then there's the energy that impacts upon manifestation and creation.
Okay.
See the difference? Something is activated and does something. The celestial light acts as a kind of a foundation, a base,
Okay.
a structure that we act within. All right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else on that aspect?
So the all these cosmic being like Christ, Pierre Khan, what was his name? residing cosmically? Which one of the light?
All three.
Okay.
All three.
Even in aura?
Yeah. I once asked, I said to Pierre Blatt, well, it seems to me that, he was indulging me, seems to me that on the one hand we have normal, ordinary reality, and then it's like there's this piece of paper, and there's a hole in the piece of paper, and as you go through the piece of paper, through this hole, all of these other planes of existence are accessed. Like somehow you had to go do something. And he kind of got irate and said, no, it's all here. All the time. That's one of the hardest things to grasp. But it is. It's just here all the time. It's not there somewhere.
Oh, okay.
All right? It's because we're so identified with this physicality and the limits of your body that you have a barrier. You know, the skin is your barrier. It's where it stops. You stop at your skin. But you don't. And there's a way to prove that. You walk out the door of your house and you're walking to your car to get into your car and drive somewhere. Are you thinking of that, or are you projecting where you're going to be? Think about it. Right? You're already somewhere else.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? That's just a simple example of, and then you can take it much further. You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about neutrinos. I'm obsessed with them ever since we started.
Oh no, I've created a monster. I told her the other day, she was over here and we were talking about something, neutrinos go through the earth, and you're always, neutrinos are passing through you all the time, right?
Neutrinos.
Yeah, they're subatomic particles. They go right through the earth. The earth has no...
And they carry recordings of where they've been and where they've originated. So we're being passed through all of this.
Yeah.
They pass right through matter because they're neutral.
Neutrinos.
Yeah, research them.
Is this new information
It'll make
for
all
you?
this practice.
I think it is. I think it is.
Well, the fact that they record where they've been, that's new to me.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
They have recording from their origin and
Who discovered these neutrinos?
Well, God, they've been around for at least 30
long
years.
time.
At least 30 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Was the cyclotron in Illinois, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In the 70s.
I think now it's in England now.
There was one in Switzerland.
Yeah, Switzerland.
They're even doing even smaller particles now.
There's what's in Switzerland?
No,
Discovery of a.
No, but it was a scientific machine that I think U.S. stopped, founding it, so it went to Europe, and that's why recently they discovered something about time and space. Recently, antimatter or something we discovered recently.
It's a cyclotron. It's 50 kilometers in diameter, or something like that. So it gives it an actual track that's 200 kilometers long or something. It costs a gazillion dollars to build, and it's big too. It's not small.
This thing that detects these things.
They
Are
discovered.
they underground? Were they?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, they were underground, right?
Yeah, you actually detect them better underground.
Yeah.
You have to be in
Because they won't be exposed to
I
radiation.
think the first one to detect them, it was a surprise. They were in some salt mine, a mile in the earth, and they had a big pool of water, and they were recording what was impacting on this pool of water. Because it was so far beneath the earth, it was absolutely still. There was no movement in the water at all. There was no wind or anything to interfere. And suddenly, there's this thing that was going through the water, and kind of like that. And what's that? That was the first discovery of neutrinos. Yeah.
Like in '77.
Or earlier.
Yeah.
earlier.
The
I'm
most-
right about that, aren't I? this is a vague memory from reading.
Yeah, it is. I think the
Scientific
most recent
American or
one
something.
they discovered is what they call the God particle.
The God part.
It was like 2 months ago or something. You know,
God, Jane. Yeah.
Yeah. because it,
In science
Yeah.
fun.
new things are getting discovered.
So that would be what? What is that an example of? Students.
Overlaying reality.
Reality. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like it's a.
It's the
It's
transcendental aspect of divine intelligence. And we're actually getting to a point where we're recording it.
It's Well, that's why they call it the God particle, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it can't be seen, can't be heard.
But you can, in
now-
fact,
Right now.
you can. I think what the thing is that they can record what it isn't.
Right.
Something like that,
Yeah.
right?
And the other interesting thing that goes alongside this is there's a term called attenuation, which is light and sound get attenuated, and scientifically that means the intensity of light and sound gets lessened as soon as it impacts water, which we are predominantly made of. So it can scientifically explain when we do these practices, like, oh, why do we keep forgetting, that we're so distracted by this physicality? Because that intensity, as soon as it impacts us, it's almost like we have to remember that it's uncreated, or we have to recreate the idea that it's uncreated, because that attenuation is preventing us or distracting us.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a
Isn't
cool
that wild?
That's a cool thought. Okay, moving right along. Do your own research. That's what the internet's for. Where are we at here? The consequence is that I read that already, didn't I? Yeah, I did. Very, very beautiful. Okay, and then he says, do these practices every day if possible. Realize that it does take time, a lot of working with it, and eventually one gets into it. It means getting up early in the morning. That's the only way to do it. So everybody from now on, you have to get up at 4 a.m. I didn't even get a chuckle.
I was up at 3 this morning, saying cold
Deliberately?
outside. Huh?
I was up at 3 too, but it wasn't by choice. I just awoke.
I just awoke too, but I went outside and cut kindling and built a fire and prayed outside, and
It was like 10 degrees out.
it's beautiful.
You're a very strange person.
I'm a Viking.
Okay, here we go. I want to speak more with you about working with the third eye. Having gone into the experience of the crown center, you turn your eyeballs upward and discover all this fountain of light, as I call it, at the top of the head, which is what Sarah was describing earlier, and everybody kind of went into this really cool state. I was watching you guys. I was like, ooh, that's nice to see these guys do that. Okay, then you begin to work with the third eye. The technique that I suggest is this. Having your eyes closed, set your glance at infinity, then open your eyes. Go back to the consciousness of infinity and open again. Okay? See how that works. Close your eyes, set your glance at infinity, then open your eyes. What will probably happen is you'll instantly focus on whatever's in the room. It's actually slightly easier when you're outside and you can look at the sky. And then you close your eyes, do it again. And you just keep doing that as a practice. Now begin to look upon your eyes as searchlights, not as organs that pick up impression, but lamps. So you're emitting light rather than receiving photons that inform your brain. So this is part of the whole description of magnetism. Magnetism is such that if you're working with healing, for example, you get to a point that you not only enhance the magnetism that oozes out of your being, but you are able to direct that magnetism through your hands. When you're working with your hands, you get to a point where you can feel as though you have etheric hands that jut out beyond your physical hands, like reaching into the patient. This is the same thing with your eyes. You get to a point where you become aware of the light of your eyes that reaches out just like the searchlights of a car. And it's not talking purely fictitiously, because in fact it's been discovered that the eyes do emit photons. So it's true scientifically. Not only the eyes, but all tissues. Every time a cell divides, there's a breakthrough of photons, even with ordinary cells. It is particularly true of the nervous tissue inside the brain. The retina of the eyes are particularly conductive. So you're actually emitting photons out of your eyes, laser eyes. How's that feel? Kind of creepy?
It's like X-Men.
Like what?
X-Men.
Something Professor Xavier would approve of.
Ever hear of the X-Men?
Oh, X-Men. Do they dress in black? Is it?
Yes, that's close. You're doing okay. So, I think some of you heard me tell this story, but I'll tell it again. That the story that Pierre Valade talks about, that he was in Japan, and this scientist wanted to study him, what he could do, or they got to talking, and it turned out this scientist had this box, and the box was a black box, and inside the black box was full of photoreceptors that would pick up photons, that bounced off the receptors, very sensitive ones, and if it picked up photons that were being emitted from a human being, then a light would come on inside the box. And so he asked Pierre Valade if he'd like to try it out. Pierre Valade went, absolutely, of course. Anything that had anything to do with science, he'd jump on it. And he's sitting inside the box, thinking light. And he would wait for the light to come on. No light. He thought, well, here I am, I'm teaching people about light practices, and I'm not getting the little light turn on. And it was kind of embarrassing. And then he remembered to do his own training. When he teaches people, he had to do it himself. And so he did it, and then the light came on.
Bang.
Yeah, he was radiating light out of us. Now the key here, there's a simple key to a lot of this. It's a way of thinking, which I am going to divulge to you. Right? You happy? Okay. And that is that you don't think the light, you become the light. And that's the difference. You don't think the experience, you become the experience. It's a subtle distinction, but it's important in all of this work. Everything that we do, this is part of it. Become what it is, rather than thinking you were doing it. Okay? You see the difference? See the difference? See the difference? Okay? Okay, good. Okay. Okay. All you do is sit in the dark, or you can just close your eyes. It's easier if you're sitting in the dark. Concentrate on emitting light through your eyes. Do this every day. You get to a point when you can envision these rays, these beams, very, very clearly. You can converge these rays, these beams slightly, and they will meet at a point which forms a kind of spotlight suspended in the dark. Now the problem, of course, is being in an utterly dark room. That's something you have to create. But it's not that hard. And you will find that it actually works. There's another thing that you can do that's not in this describe how you do this. What you do is you can either just sit or you can even lie on your back. Might be easier if you're lying on your back. And you look at the bridge of your nose. And then you let your gaze kind of slide down your nose till you're looking at the tip of your nose. And eventually you will get to a point where there will be this little light that's hovering right here. Okay? And that's the convergence of the beam, because this is very tight then, because you're looking right here. This is where you're converging your eyes. All right?
You can merge with the light coming from the third eye.
No, not the third eye, just your two,
headlights.
yeah. And then eventually then what that's doing is it's reflecting off of the energy of your aura. Okay, it sounds weird, I know, but it works. Okay, and you can just practice that. It takes some practice until you get it. And in this way, you continue to enhance your skills with working with light. Okay. Does anybody need a break?
Mm-hmm.
Need a break? Okay, let's take a break. Okay. Continuing. I think we're only going to get through 2 lessons, and there are 3. So there's the sheets are over there. If you want to take them home with you, the sheets.
Oh, the other sheets.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I don't know whether or not
Oh,
you.
there are only.
There's 4 of them,
Right.
and Lima or Sarah has one already,
Oh, okay.
and you have the CD. You have the document.
This document?
Course in Meditation.
Oh,
You're
that's all
welcome.
one. Okay.
Oh, you mean on text? Is this in the Sufi text?
Yeah. No, not in Sufi text. It's I sent you the Course in Meditation,
Did you?
didn't I? Well, I will.
Okay. I need to get another one.
If anybody wants it, I have. Sarah took the document that I have, and she typed it into a Word program. And if you want, just give me your email, and I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Is that this?
Yeah.
You're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. You typed this whole thing?
Yeah, because, well, it was hard to read. Some of it is faded and some
Yeah.
of it is crossed out. And it's hard for the eye to track and the brain to follow a wide column like this, so I did it all as double column. But so I don't know why this is printing out single column, but
It's printed out. It's
single
okay.
column.
Yeah.
Huh.
Didn't work. It didn't transfer to my PC that way.
Lost that formatting, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you're going to send them a Word document, they could reformat it if they
They
want.
can do whatever they want with it. Okay, here we go. I don't know whether or not you've seen a hologram. One is able nowadays with a hologram to project an image into a dark room. You can walk through that image and it looks so very real. It's a kind of stereo effect of light. You're able to bring this 3-dimensional image right in the middle of the room. It's the cinema of the future. What happens is that there is this pinpoint of light suspended in the dark, and you are really creating it out of your own glance. It can be very beautiful. It doesn't have to be just a spotlight. It could become like a whole sparkling fireworks of light, something absolutely magnificent. You can move it forwards and backwards. Now, here we go. If you turn your eyeballs upward, okay, just close your eyes again and imagine these beams of light, these little flat, spotlights coming out of your eyeballs. Move it, turn these eyeballs up, and the beams are going to reach upward through the crown center, right up into this fountain of light at the top of the head. They become the fountain. Turn your eyeballs up and imagine that you're looking right at your crown center, and let these 2 little spotlights flow right through that fountain of light and become the fountain. you've mastered this, start working with the third eye. Now notice that he says when you've mastered this. Okay? But we'll talk about it anyway. When you've mastered this, start working with the third eye. Start being aware of a third beam that reaches out of the center of your forehead. At least it appears as if it were so. It hits the spotlight, so you have 3 beams converging on that spotlight. When you're working with the third eye, I advise you always to link up the beam of the third eye with its source. Now this is kind of critical, because he's mentioned it like 4 times now. That you always remember that you're drawing from the celestial realms energy into your being, and then refracting that through the pineal gland, and it becomes a beam of light. It's not a source from within your brain. Okay? Whereas the 2 little spotlights of your eyeballs are. It's a much more refined energy. The third eye. So imagine that you are aware of this beam of light that descends through the crown center vertically. It's refracted in the head forward through the third eye, just like the light of a prism is refracted in the form of the light of your third eye. Perhaps you recognize the glance of the mystic. It's what we refer to when we say, I am the eyes through which God sees, and I am the divine glance. Your whole consciousness retracts back somehow, and you're bringing the light through from a very high place, down through you. If you look at some of the pictures of Pir Murshid Inayat Khan, you'll recognize that sort of focus of light. He's looking from a distance, right into your soul. Now, when you set your eyes at infinity, you tend to do that. The glance descends from a very high up and passes through your eyes. This is only possible if you displace the center of your consciousness above your head. Do I need to go over that? No? Okay, that's why as you inhale, you turn your eyeballs upward to displace the center of your consciousness very high up. When you exhale, you maintain the vantage point of your consciousness very high up and simply let the light of your glance descend through your eyes and through your third eye and reach out into the universe. Imagine that you are facing a very bright searchlight on a car or the lights of a TV studio. The first action that triggers off the linkage between your mind and matter is imagination. It has been ascertained that if you meditate on light, you radiate more photons than you do otherwise. We're not hallucinating. Something really tangible is happening. So face the light and just enjoy it. Don't try to protect yourself from it. For the moment, we're just imagining a light. So there is no danger to you. Oh, I say they got the pages mixed up here. There is no danger to your eyes. Enjoy feeling lit up, feeling flooded with light in your chest, your head, in your arms. A question has occurred to me as we're doing this. What do you think the purpose of all this is? These very elaborate practices. What do you think it is? I know what I think, but that doesn't necessarily,
To loosen the constraints of our bodies and minds and
Do you think that's happening?
yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have an idea?
We try to become, not just think about it, but
Okay.
to become the light.
All right. Anyone else?
Part of becoming the light is to become right-sized, where the light above us is bigger than us.
Okay. Anyone else? Did you have something?
One of the things is mastering. mastery over the self so that we can be useful in our purpose.
Okay. Okay, good. Did you have one? Or you...
Well, it's similar kind of, it's affecting the environment
Okay.
as well as ourselves.
All right. Good. Good. Because sometimes we, I sometimes feel like I'm, teaching these practices, and I'm wondering, does anybody really like feel that there's an actual effect? You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I'm glad to know that.
Yeah, I in the last couple of years, I've felt a huge change in my life, but I can't really put my finger on it.
Yeah, and that's you just touched a really important point, and that is that the changes that you experience are actually organic. You don't really recognize. You might vaguely remember some other person who was less aware, but it won't matter a lot to you because that person isn't you anymore. Okay, it's a very cool kind of side effect. Although somehow we'd like to feel righteous and say, well, look how many changes I've made, but you really don't notice.
No,
It just
no,
happens.
It's not anything about that.
Yeah.
It's like not quite sure,
Just the most normal thing, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel any bigger or better.
Oh, I'm
No.
sorry.
I mean, I feel better. I feel.
Remember what I
happy,
said? Remember what I maybe not everyone here has heard me say it. And it's an important thing to remember. Is it's kind of a paraphrase of something Pure Valaya used to say. He'd say that the recruiting angel reaches out and looks for somebody to do the job. They look for the absolute best possible person that they can find, but all they can come up with is you. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Okay. In the second stage, you discover that the reason why you feel so happy being exposed to a bright light is because it makes you conscious of your own light. Do you guys have that feeling ever?
Oh God, there's like, it's not bright enough.
Yeah. It brings it.
You smile.
Isn't it fun to be happy? It brings out something that is already in you. Now, just be aware of your own light, which is really the divine light that is coming through you. There are different ways of looking upon this. To start with, you just feel as though you're glowing very intensely, like being in a state of incandescence. Okay, here we go with more practices. Next, concentrate on your heart and experience it as a sun. Just like the very first thing I told you this morning, right? Radiate from that sun. Let the rays of light cross through your body and reach out into large distances. That will make you aware of the radiance that is still inside the body and the radiance that is outside the body. It's all one. It's all the radiance of the aura. I'm saying this so that you do not imagine that the aura is just outside the body, or that of the body, or that the body emanates an aura. Okay? You understand what you just said?
Mm-mm.
You're glowing because that's what you are. Doesn't have a point source. How do I explain this? Imagine that you're based fundamentally your localization of identity is walking around in an ocean of light. And as you walk around in the ocean of light, it's just like a luminous, one of these luminous sea creatures from the bottom of the sea, right? Mm-hmm. That you see in nature television programs. And as they move through this darkness, which is really less light, they bring with them their own illumination. Mm-hmm. And it's part of the environment that they're within. And so as you're moving through this environment that you're in, you're taking with you, you're bringing with you luminosity, but you're also interfacing with the luminosity all around you.
Yes, but how does that tie into the aura? That the aura is not
That's what I was talking
localized.
about. It's not localized. It's not. You're not emanating something. You are part of something. This is a subtle point.
All right, so here's where it all gets confused because you go to these New Age fairs and they have these little take your photograph of your aura kind of thing.
Right, the Kirlian.
And Kirlian photographs. And so each person comes up with different colors.
Okay, guys. This is the important one.
All right.
This is not grade school. What we're doing.
Yeah.
Psychic fairs are grade school.
So that I don't know about Kirlian photography, if it is actually anything that's scientific.
Yeah.
That is recording the aura, or what I have is a misconception that I am carrying over from those years when I used to go to those fairs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking the aura the same way as I did 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, time to change your thinking then.
Okay, so help walk me through this then, because
Okay.
I'm holding on to this structure of what a definition in my head as to what the aura is. So
Yeah,
the aura does have a location.
Yeah.
And it is expansive.
Yeah.
And it is moving around.
Yes,
And not everyone has the same aura.
that's right.
So there is some kind of differentiating.
Are you a
something.
physical body or are you a being of light?
Hey, both.
So the physical body is denser light than the internal light. So there are different layers of density in this thing that's
Yeah.
we're calling Alima right now that's moving around.
Now you're getting it.
Right. Well, that I get.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the aura, I guess I don't really understand what it is then.
It's your body of light. It just glows just because it is.
So it
Doesn't have to have a
is
source.
it the light of intelligence that
Well, it's all
is-
three.
it's all three
Yeah.
that the aura is glowing.
Remember,
with all three.
we are always all of the universe all the time. We just get focused on individuation.
All right. So I was parsing out the aura.
Yeah.
Where aura is that bubble that I had earlier,
Yeah, sure. Except it doesn't have any boundaries.
which burst later on like practice number 4. So I think I'm getting it now
Okay.
as to my whole misunderstanding as to what the aura is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. Take your time.
Okay.
The problem is it's your brain is conceptualizing
Yeah.
rather than experiencing.
It's
Okay.
doing
And that's
both.
okay.
It's doing both, and then
Yeah.
taking what I have been told in the past. So here I am
We're
growing out of that.
Right. It's a common problem in this age actually, because we're continually confronted with information that appears as if it's okay, but it's really rather incomplete, and oftentimes wishful thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's this thing that Mercer talks about in a few places where someone has an experience, a spiritual experience, which is fine. Pretty much every human being that ever lived has some kind of spiritual experience, or what we call a spiritual experience, a transcendent experience. But then they believe that this transcendent experience that they just had is the all and everything of universal reality. They have just been given the truth, capital T.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they write a book, and they give lectures, and they expound, and perhaps they get
On TV.
yeah, and perhaps they get a following, and on and on and on it goes, and it could be very subtle. I could think of several. right offhand. And you probably can too if you think about it. People that at one time you may have admired and read their books, and then later on you realize, oh, they just still had a very small piece of it. And that's something to keep in mind, because you're continually discovering and rediscovering and then re-refining your own knowledge and your experience. It never stops. You okay? All right. Is that helpful?
Oh yeah, because I get people still that run up to me and say, "Oh, your aura's like glowing
No, pink,
pink
whatever.
today."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for that information.
Uh-huh.
They don't realize that they're processing this through their own brains. And their brain is going to give them the information that they feel is appropriate. That's always true. Anytime you have an experience, you're going to process it through
Yeah.
your own filters.
Yeah.
That's why angels have wings. Angels don't have wings. Angels don't have bodies. They just have their energy. But we got to give them wings because that anthropomorphizes them, and then we feel more comfortable. Would you like another blanket?
No.
You all right? Okay. All right, here we go.
We need that heater from the bathroom.
Now, concentrate on... Oh, well, we did that already, right?
On our
Well,
heart
I want
of
to...
the sun.
Yeah, okay. But this is where Lima got a little confused. Okay, well, let me read it again and see how you feel about it now.
Okay.
Concentrate on your heart and experience it as a sun. Radiate from that sun. Let the rays of light cross through your body and reach out into large distances. That will make you aware of the radiance that is still inside the body and the radiance that is outside the body. It's all one. It's all the radiance of the aura. I'm saying this so that you don't imagine that the aura is just outside the body or that the body emanates an aura. Okay? You get it now?
I have had this experience where it's night, it's in pitch black. I can see what looks like a general human form. I can't see I have my eyes closed, but I can see like the arm shape passing in front or even in back.
Uh-huh.
I can see what looks like a human form, light form.
Okay.
And pitch darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not coming from the body, but it has a body shape.
Good, yeah, sure.
Maybe it's you.
Not only that, but you're also running through your own filters, remember. So
And
you're
then I can see other people's. If I'm asleep, or I could see light coming through, or eyes closed, I can see other light body shapes. I can't tell who it is, but I can see light shapes moving.
That's great.
I don't see,
No.
I don't see body shapes, but I in the dark like that, I thought that's what you were gonna say. I think there's a light on. You know, I will have gone to bed and I get up and I'm like, where's that light coming from? And I'll look all over and there's no lights on, but yet it feels like it's just glowing in the room. And
Yeah.
and it took me a while to figure out that
It was you.
yeah, I guess
That
you
too.
know,
'Cause I've had this experience as well.
yeah, it's you know, it's come to be a comforting, kind of a comforting thing, because it came so unexpected, and I think it was at a time where I was doing a lot of practices on my own, just enjoying, you know, nature and
You glow because you glow. But you're also part of the overall ocean of light that you exist within.
right. So that just is.
It just is.
Yeah, and you are able
Yeah.
to.
And you
that's what-
discern it, and then your brain, when you observe it, will struggle to create something that it understands.
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. That's the important point, I think.
Because the brain is very tricky that way.
Yeah.
Has to feel safe.
You guys ever read Carlos Castaneda?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Long
the
time
very
ago.
first book,
Cosmic
Mhm.
egg.
Huh? No, not that one. The very first one. A
Don
Yaqui
Juan.
way of knowledge. Don Juan,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Mm,
And he's
Don
talking
Juan.
about, Don Juan's trying to teach him to see this, and
Yeah.
and he's watching some other guy run across this stream or something that was very difficult, and Carlos just thinks it's amazing that he can do this, and Don Juan's just frustrated because he can't seem to get him to see, because what he wanted to see was the actual energy body of the sorcerer. Not see the body, see the energy body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're talking about.
Mm.
That very same thing, which was shaped like an egg, according to Carlos Castaneda.
An
Well,
egg.
is this?
That's what he saw.
Yeah.
I tend to think of it sometimes as layers of being that become less differentiated to me and more part of the whole as it gets farther from my body.
Good.
So I do
Well,
think
it's
of,
also up close too.
so I do think of the most immediate layer, if you will, as being sort of the filtration,
Mm-hmm.
and that's useful to filter energies so that only good energy passes through.
Yeah, it's handy to think that way because our brains. There is a state of thinking that is outside of your mental processes. I don't know how to describe it other than to say that, where you know things, or you will. It's like your mind expands in this most kind of explosive way. Somebody used the word explosion here a little while ago.
Matrix.
Yeah, right. It just explodes, and expands in this, and you're left wondering what just happened. Those moments are the moments when you're tuning into the more refined aspect of your being that already exists. Of necessity, things are limited because they get really complex otherwise, and you walk around, and seeing people's auras all the time, it might be a little difficult. You still have to operate in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when you do have those moments of breakthrough, like you just had a little one, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when the mind expands.
Mm-hmm.
And it moves beyond its normal, limited synaptic connections. And you're actually in the mind of God, so to speak. All right? Okay? Okay, let's approach this from a different angle. In the aura, there's a whole gradation between the infrared and the ultraviolet, between fire and what one calls light. If you concentrate on the bottom of your spine, you will enhance the fiery aspect of the aura, the bioplasma. If you concentrate on the violet at the top of the head, you'll be enhancing the cold light without heat that is to be found in the higher regions of your aura. Your heart chakra is placed exactly in between these two, therefore radiating centripetally or at the synthesis between these two extremes. No, please stop. I can't stand it any longer. Okay, we just get a little more. We're going to finish this up and then we'll do some zikr. How's that?
That's good.
Okay. If you exhale, you could concentrate on the red color in the two lower chakras, and as you inhale, concentrate more on the heart center, which is the yellow, green, orange, then the third eye where there's violet, and then the crown center where you get all the colors of the spectrum, and beyond that, just white or colorless. Turn your eyeballs upwards and reach with your consciousness as high as you can. It will seem like a fountain of light that keeps on rising higher and higher and breaks into showers of light on all sides. You might experience the multicolored lights of the spectrum and somehow a white light that seems to emerge from the top of all that. You might be aware of a kind of pillar of light that descends in the center and reaches down into the chakra at the bottom of the spine, but keeps on branching forward through the different chakras. It's like the light of lights connecting you to all beings with the source of light. That's a lot, isn't it? Like I said, this is graduate school. And now, once more, and if you'd like to study this, there's the Philosophy of Light from Shahabadi Suhrawardi, which you can get on, abe.com. And now, once more, come across the dichotomy that we've come across several times. Inasmuch as you are conscious of your individual self, you are the instrument through which the light functions. Did you hear what he said? Inasmuch as you are conscious of your individual self, you are the instrument through which the light functions. Mm-hmm. So if you are unconscious of your individual self, what do you suppose happens?
You're less conscious of your function.
Good one. Thank you, Tajali. Inasmuch, so it's important that we have individuation. See, we get into this idea that somehow we need to dissolve into some kind of, cosmic mishmash or something like that. And no, we need to exist because we have stuff to do. Inasmuch as you are able to identify yourself with the totality, you are this light. It depends upon the attunement of your consciousness. It is possible that you are able to experience yourself as both at the same time as being your body, your aura, and the pure light of intelligence. There are at least 3 levels here. There's actually 9, I think, but stick with 3. Okay? Where did this come from? Okay, I don't know how that got in there. It looks like a page from one of the first lessons. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of...
That's all.
So there's another whole lesson. We can go through that. Maybe not.
It takes a lot of energy to grasp it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After a while, it becomes natural.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're first exposed to these practices, it's like, what? What was that? But if you keep at it, they become normal and natural. Mm-hmm. And just then, as I said, it just becomes an organic change. Mm-hmm. You shift and you don't even really realize it. Other than a vague memory of being someone else not quite as cool. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Is it 0203 2013 today?
Yes, today was the 3rd. Yesterday was Groundhog Day.
That's right.
I saw his
He did
shadow.
not
It's supposed to
see his shadow. There will be an early spring.
Yeah.
That's the first in a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Only
Weird.
16 times has that happened since 1987.
Oh, 1987.
That's good.
I'm really impressed that you know that.
I looked it up yesterday.
Oh,
No,
okay.
we saw his shadow.
I followed it on TV.
I heard
Okay.
on NPR.
You can sit there, babe.
It's okay. Be comfortable. That's the important. We want you to be comfortable.
Jennifer,
Yeah, that's fine.
do you
Okay.
like a pillow?
Oh yeah, give me one of
Anybody
those.
else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take a pillow.
They're here, guys.
Me too.
No pillow?
I don't think I've
What?
like this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Does that make you
Alright.
feel better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll, well, first, I'm gonna start this off with you, and then I'll read this as you continue doing Allahu. Allahu, 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 Hazrat Khwajali, Hassan Basri, Abul Fazl Abdul Wahid bin Zaid, Abul Fayez Husayl bin Ayad, Sultan Ibrahim Adham Balki, Sa'adinuddin Hazaifa Umar Rashi, Aminuddin Abu Bakr Basri, Imam Sheruddin Wali, Abu Ishaq Shami Chisti Sheikh Omar Sheikh, Abu Ahmed bin Firuz Tukul Chisti, Abu Yusuf Chisti, Murud Chisti, Haji Sharif Zindani Chisti, Usman Hanani Chisti, Moinuddin Chisti, Qutubuddin Bakhtiar Kafi Chisti, Farid al-Haq Maser Ganji Sakar Chisti, Nizam al-Haq Waldin Muhammad bin Sayyid Ahmed Badwani Bukhari Chisti, Nasruddin Waldin Mahmud Sadiq Dili Chisti, Sheikh Kamal al-Haq Waldin Masur Bakalama Chisti, Siraj al-Haq Waldin Chisti, Halima al-Haq Chisti, Mahmoud Frajin Chisti, Jamal al-Haq Chisti, Jaman Chisti, Muhammad Hassan Chisti, Muhammad Sayyid Chisti, Yahya al-Madani Chisti, Kalim Allah Jahanabari Chisti, Nizam al-Haq Waldin Harangabari Chisti, Fakir al-Haq Waldin Harangabari Jahanabari Chisti, Maulana Muhammad Kutubuddin Chisti, Maulana Muhammad Nasruddin Urf Kali Mayin Sayyid Chisti, Sayyid Muhammad Qibli Kalimi Deli Chisti, Sayyid Muhammad Abu Hashim Madani Chisti, Pir al-Murshid Hazrat Anayat Khan Chisti, Pir Vilayat Anayat Khan Chisti, Al-Madat Murshid, Al-Madat Murshid, Al-Madat Murshid, Al-Madat Murshid, Al-Madat Murshid, Al-Madat Murshid, Al-Madat Murshid. Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. To the left, Allah. To the right, Man. To the left, Rahim. Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. 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 La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 hey, la ilaha illallah, 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 hey, la ilaha illallah, 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 hey, la ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. Hu Allah, hu Allah, la ilaha illallah, 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 hu Allah, hu Allah, la ilaha Ya Nur, Ya Munawar. This is the practice for all of these practices we've been doing all day. Nur, the all-pervading, uncreated light, divine intelligence. Munawar is generally translated as the lamp, your radiance. Okay? You as the radiant one. Ya Nur, Ya Munawar. 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 Now inhale Nur and exhale Munawar. Just like Pirulai talked about, drawing the energy in through the crown center, just like there's this wonderful beam of light from the celestial realms flowing into your body and then radiated as a golden sun from your heart, with Munawar. Okay. And then we'll finish with Mercy Zikr. La ilaha illallahu. La ilaha illallahu. La O thou art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the Lord of heaven and earth. Open our hearts that we may hear thy voice, which constantly comes from within. Disclose to us thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us thy great goodness, teach us thy loving forgiveness, raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide us, send us the peace of thy divine Spirit, and unite us all in thy perfect being. Disclose to us thy divine light, 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 disclose to us thy divine light. Warner of coming dangers, awakener of the world from sleep, deliverer of the message of God, thou art our Savior, the sun at the dawn of creation, the light of the whole universe, the fulfillment of God's purpose, thou the life eternal. We seek refuge in thy loving enfoldment, Spirit of guidance, source of all beauty, and creator of harmony. Love, lover, and beloved Lord, thou art our divine ideal.